The city has gone quiet long ago, and now the night belongs to stone and water and the slow breathing of the great baths. You walk through narrow streets that still remember the heat of the day, feeling it stored in the paving under your sandals like a memory that refuses to fade. The stones give back a gentle warmth, not enough to be called hot, but enough to remind you of bright sunlight and crowded hours, of voices and footsteps that have already dissolved into the dark. With each step, that faint heat rises through the thin soles of your sandals, into the arches of your feet, up through your ankles and calves, as if the city itself were sending a slow, reassuring pulse into your body, telling you that the day is over now, that its edges have softened and its urgency has drained away. Above you, the sky over the roofs is a deep, steady blue, darkened toward black where it arches highest, still holding the last trace of color near the horizon. The stars are present, but not sharp or cold. They seem slightly blurred by the thin haze of warmth rising from 1,000 small places, from kitchen hearths where the last embers glow, from lamps behind shutters, from the great furnaces of the thermae that continue their patient labor even after most people have gone to sleep. Between the buildings, thin ribbons of smoke drift upward, faint and gray against the sky, dissolving into the night without drama. Somewhere far off, a dog barks once, then falls silent again. A shutter closes with a soft thud. Sandaled feet scuff distant cobblestones and fade away. The city is not entirely still, but everything that moves now does so more quietly, as if muffled by the thickness of the air and the late hour. When you finally see the outline of the bathhouse ahead, it rises from the cluster of lower buildings like the flank of some enormous, resting animal. The outer walls are broad and high, their surfaces broken by pilasters and shallow arches that catch what little light there is and turn it into long, gentle shadows. Here and there, small windows are set high in the masonry, each one closed with thin sheets of translucent stone. Behind a few of them, oil lamps still burn, and their light seeps through in softened squares of honey-colored glow. The glow spills down the wall in pale streaks, then pools on the pavement below in quiet patches of warmth that seem to belong to another time of day. The main doors stand not fully open, not completely closed, but half drawn together, leaving a narrow dark slice between them. Through that gap, you can glimpse the deeper interior darkness and a suggestion of movement, the outline of a figure, the curve of a column, the soft shimmer of lamplight on worn stone. Just inside, the porter sits with his back to a column, his body molded to the stone by long habit. His arms are folded, his head tilted forward in a posture that could be sleep or could be the stillness of someone used to listening to the night. Beside him, on a small stone ledge, a clay oil lamp burns with a low, steady flame, its light rising and falling almost imperceptibly as the wick consumes the oil. As you approach, the porter lifts his eyes, the lamplight catching the lines of his face and the faint gleam of his pupils. His features are tired but calm, softened by the hour. There is no edge in his gaze, only a weary attentiveness, the quiet recognition of someone who has watched many evenings unfold in the same way. He knows you, not your name perhaps, but your pattern. One of the late guests, who comes not for conversations at the height of the afternoon, not for noisy games in the courtyard, but for the slower, gentler company of water and stone after the crowds have melted away. For a heartbeat, the two of you share the same pool of lamplight, the same slice of air, the same small moment between outside and in. He gives a simple nod, a tiny inclination of the head that is almost more of a breath than a movement, and his hand shifts just enough to move the door a fraction wider, easing your way. No words are needed. The gesture is practiced, the invitation familiar. The boundaries of the bathhouse loosen around you. And you step through. As you cross the threshold, the world of the street falls away behind you like the closing of a book. The faint sound of the distant dog, the occasional cartwheel, the whisper of air between narrow walls, all of it thins and then disappears, replaced by a different sort of quiet, one that belongs to enclosed spaces, to water, to stone that has learned how to hold sound and let it fade slowly. Just inside the outer doorway, you pause beneath the vaulted entrance hall. The ceiling curves above you in a shallow barrel, its plaster washed in pale tones that catch and diffuse the lamplight. The air here is cooler than outside, not from any cold source, but from the thickness of the walls and the absence of direct sun. It smells of lime wash and old plaster, of stone that has absorbed moisture over decades, of the faint, clean bitterness of water evaporated and renewed. There is a subtle trace of the day's passage too, lingering in the air like the thinnest veil, the ghost of perfumes that brushed through, oils of bay and rosemary and myrtle, the sour edge of sweat that has mostly been washed away but still clings in the tiniest measure to the pores of the building, the hint of wool and linen and leather that together form the fabric of daily life. Ahead of you, the space opens into the great court, the palestra. You see it first as a framing of darker air beyond the arch, then as a broad rectangle of open night, edged in stone. You take a few steps forward and descend 3 shallow stairs, each one worn in the center by the passage of countless feet. The sound of your soles meeting each step rings softly upward, touching the underside of the vault and returning to your ears as a faint echo, as if the building were acknowledging your arrival with a quiet, hollow tone. The courtyard lies under the open sky, a calm basin surrounded by colonnades. The central ground is a simple expanse of beaten earth and fine gravel, faintly uneven, its surface caught here and there by thin slivers of lamplight from the surrounding porticos. In some places the earth is darker, dampened by spilled water from amphorae carried earlier in the day, patches that still release a faint, cool scent of wet soil. Around the edges, low stone benches run along the base of the colonnades, their surfaces worn smooth where people sat, leaned, set down their belongings. Those benches now hold only a few scattered shapes, a forgotten towel, a folded cloth, an empty cup suddenly magnified by the quietness of the space. The colonnade itself is a gentle rhythm of column and shadow, each shaft of stone rising from its base to its capital with a steady, unhurried certainty. Lamps are not placed at every column, instead, they are spaced irregularly, here too close together, there a stretch of dark. Their small flames cast narrow cones of light that fall across the floor and climb partway up the shafts, making each column seem to breathe, to lean into the glow and then recede again as the flame moves. In the center of the courtyard, a small fountain still runs. You see it first as a slight disturbance in the dark, then as a pale shape, the rim of its basin, the slender pillar that rises in the middle. The water falls in a continuous, understated thread, its sound muted by distance and open air, a soft, steady murmur that folds easily into the silence of the night. Its surface catches a narrow fragment of starlight and one reflected lamp, turning them into a trembling, silvered patch that appears and disappears as the water breaks and reforms. You choose the shadowed side of the colonnade and walk there, letting the darkness wrap around you like a loose cloak. The stone floor underfoot is smoother here, protected from weather by the overhanging roof, and your footsteps make a more definite sound, a low, steady tapping that moves with you and then lags behind in the arches above, softer and softer until it is gone. As you pass each column, your fingers drift across the cool, faintly rough surface of the stone. On some, you feel shallow grooves carved long ago, on others, the stone is smoother where countless hands have rested in the same absent-minded gesture, pausing on their way in or out, or leaning while talking and listening. These worn places are slightly polished, a quiet record of touch preserved in mineral form. Between the columns, portions of the wall are visible, and on some of these, fragments of painted plaster remain. You see traces of vines in faded green, their leaves curling in stylized patterns, small birds, their outlines softened by time, hints of blue that once suggested the sea or the sky. The colors have lost their sharpness, retreated from brightness into moderation. In daylight they might seem worn and incomplete, but under this thin lamplight and the deep blue of the night, they feel precisely right, gentle, restful, as if they too have learned to sleep. The further you walk from the entrance, the more the faint memory of the street thins, until it is replaced by another, deeper pulse, the hidden heartbeat of the baths themselves. Beneath the seeming stillness, you begin to notice it in small ways, a change in the vibration underfoot, a quiet, continuous rushing sound just at the edge of hearing, the irregular drip of water falling from some unseen height to some unseen basin. Somewhere, far below, flames are working, air is moving, water is circulating through channels cut into and under the stone long ago. At one corner of the courtyard, half in shadow, a smaller doorway opens into the apoditarium, the undressing room. The entrance is modest, not grand like the main portals, but framed in its own way, two short pilasters, a plain lintel, a simple threshold stone worn by countless crossings. You step through and feel the change immediately, as if you have passed through an invisible curtain. The air here is warmer, the warmth not sharp but enfolding, gently close around your arms and face. It smells of oil, of clean skin, of wool that has held the day's sweat and then begun to release it, of fresh water that has splashed out of basins and dried on stone. The room is broad and tall, its ceiling a shallow vault whose curves catch the lamplight in long, soft arcs. The walls are thick, and the light seems to cling to them, making the shadows deep but not threatening, only full and soft-edged. Along the walls run stone benches, simple and solid, their surfaces smoothed by years of sitting, leaning, placing bundles and belts. Above them, embedded directly into the plaster, rows of small bronze pegs are arranged in orderly lines. Earlier in the day, they would have held tunics and cloaks, belts and bags, hanging in overlapping layers of fabric, the colors and textures of many lives briefly touching. Now most of the pegs stand bare, catching the lamplight in small, dull glints, like a row of half-closed eyes. Here and there, a towel still hangs, forgotten or left for later. A folded garment rests on a bench, perhaps belonging to someone lingering in another room. The floor bears the faint, dried marks of wet feet that passed through earlier, overlapping shapes that now are only pale echoes of movement. You choose a place near one of the oil lamps, where the light is clear but not harsh. The lamp itself rests in a shallow niche cut into the wall, its clay body round and low, its spout protruding to support the wick. The wick is a small, dark thread soaked in oil, its tip glowing red where the flame takes hold. The flame is modest, a single tongue of light that leans and straightens with the slow currents of air. When you move closer, it draws slightly toward you, as if reaching, then steadies again once you settle. It throws a warm, golden patch on the wall and bench, within which the color of your skin, the pale undertone of the stone, and the faint hues of your garments appear softer and gentler. You sit and loosen your sandals, fingers finding the familiar buckles and knots by touch. The leather straps slide away from your feet with a faint, dry whisper, and you set the sandals neatly beneath the bench, side by side, their worn soles facing the wall. Without them, the contact between your skin and the stone of the floor is different, more direct, more honest. The stone is cool at first, almost startling after the slight insulation of the sandals. But after a few breaths it begins to feel neutral, then quietly supportive. You notice tiny variations in its surface, a shallow dip where someone's heel has rested over and over, a slightly higher ridge near the base of the bench, a fine sprinkling of sand near the wall, caught there by the smallest irregularities. Piece by piece, you remove the clothes of the outer world. A layer of wool here, a strip of linen there, cloth that has brushed against shop counters and doorways, that has carried the weight of the day's dust and the faint scent of whatever streets you passed through. Each item you fold with simple care and place beside you, creating a small, ordered pile that is both humble and precise. With each layer set aside, you feel the air more clearly against your skin. Along your shoulders and chest, the warmth is immediate, like a soft touch. Along your legs and arms, there is a delicate balance between the broader warmth of the room and the cooler currents that slip along the floor and up from the doorway. The sense of being encased begins to fall away, leaving you lighter, less defined by fabric and more by your own breathing. For a little while, you simply sit there, bare in the soft lamplight, letting the room hold you. There is no hurry, no schedule pressing from outside, only the gentle invitation of the spaces beyond, waiting in their own time. The distant sounds of the baths reach you more clearly now, as if your skin itself has become a listening surface. You hear the steady whisper of moving water, the irregular but frequent drip of some unseen leak or condensation far away, the faint, rhythmic crackle of a fire being tended below. These sounds are wrapped in layers of stone and air, so that they arrive not as sharp noises but as soft impressions, like ripples felt rather than seen. There are voices too, though only a few. They come from neighboring rooms and corridors, low and unhurried. A phrase here, a murmur there, nothing distinct, words dissolved into tones. They sound like people at the end of their day, speaking because it is natural to do so, not because anything urgent needs to be said. When you rise, the stone accepts the new pattern of your weight without complaint. The small impression of warmth you left on the bench begins at once to mingle with the greater warmth of the room, becoming part of its larger, slow-moving current. You pick up nothing besides the simple cloth you wrap around yourself, enough to cover, light enough to feel almost weightless. Then you move toward the inner door, where a curtain of heavy woven fabric hangs from a bronze rod, softening the passage between one temperature and the next. The curtain is made of thick threads, perhaps wool blended with something lighter, its surface rough but not coarse. As you lift it aside with your hand, it brushes against your forearm with a muted, rustling sound, leaving a faint, almost imperceptible tickle. Beyond it, a warmer breath of air flows over you, carrying with it the scent of water that has been heated and cooled, of stone that has absorbed steam and given it back. It is a subtle, smooth difference, but unmistakable, like stepping from the shade into a patch of late sunlight. The corridor beyond is narrower than the entrance hall, its ceiling lower, closing in just enough to guide your steps forward. The walls on either side are plastered and painted in simple tones that look almost gray in this light but might reveal faint colors in the day. Small square openings punctuate the walls at intervals, each one covered by a thin slab of stone, behind which hidden lamps burn. From these concealed lights, a diluted glow seeps into the corridor, creating pools of softness along the way. Your shadow moves ahead of you, long and stretched, then short and gathered, lengthening and shrinking as you pass each opening, as if the bathhouse were quietly attempting to measure you, to understand how you fit into its spaces. With each step, you feel the floor under your bare feet growing gradually warmer. At first it is only a subtle shift, the coolness lessening. Then it becomes more distinct, what was neutral stone takes on a pleasant, body-like warmth, and then a shade above, a steady heat that seems to come not from the surface but from within. Underneath this corridor, you know without seeing, lies the hypocaust, the hidden system of empty spaces and low brick pillars that raise the floor just enough to let hot air flow. Beneath those spaces, the furnace breathes, sending heated air along channels and up through vertical flues in the walls, wrapping the rooms in a consistent, patient warmth. You cannot see any of this, but you can feel its presence in the way the stones under your feet feel not just warm but alive, as if they are quietly exhaling. The awareness of this invisible architecture, of the care with which heat is guided and restrained, gives the warmth a different quality in your mind. It is not simply hot stone, it is deliberate comfort, shaped and managed, a controlled fire turned into kindness. The first full embrace of that comfort comes as you step into the tepidarium, the warm room. The doorway opens onto a space where the air feels like a held breath, suspended between hot and cold, neither pressing nor withdrawing. The warmth here is the kind that the body recognizes immediately as friendly, the precise middle point where muscles begin to loosen by themselves, where the mind signals that nothing is required of it except to be present. Lamps are more numerous in this room. They sit in shallow recesses along the walls, in niches at the base of engaged columns, on small brackets of stone or bronze. Each flame is small, but together they weave a net of light that leaves very little harsh shadow. Instead, there are gradients, places where the light is stronger, softly defined, surrounded by haloed areas where it fades into a dim, golden dusk. On the floor, mosaics unfold in careful patterns. Under your feet, you see waves rendered in small tesserae of white and dark blue, spirals in shades of ochre and green, stylized fish with tiny eyes made of darker stone that glimmer when the light catches them. The patterns loop and intertwine, repeating and morphing, a quiet geometry that invites aimless observation. When you move, the arrangement of shapes beneath you changes slowly, and each step reveals a new small combination of colors. Your gaze can drift along these designs without strain, following one spiral into another, tracing the curve of a leaf or the outline of a shell, losing track of where one motif begins and another ends. Along the walls, wide stone benches are built into the structure itself, their surfaces continuing the line of the lower wall before curving out in a gentle ledge. Some are bare, others hold folded cloths, a bronze basin, a small ceramic jar of oil left ready on its side, stoppered. You choose one of these benches, not because it is particularly special, but because the lamp near it is steady and the stone looks subtly lighter there, as if it had been more often in use. Sitting, you feel the warmth of the bench come up through the backs of your legs and into your spine, more intense than the warmth of the air but still gentle, like a persistent, comforting hand. When you lean back against the wall, another layer of heat meets your shoulders. Inside the wall, vertical channels carry warm air upward, and the plaster over them feels slightly warmer than the rest, a vertical band of comfort rising behind you. Your back rests along that channel, and you can almost imagine the air moving behind the plaster, flowing quietly past and on toward the vault. The ceiling in the tepidarium rises overhead in a smooth curve, its surface decorated with shallow moldings and faded paint. Lines of color trace outlines of panels that do not exist physically, frames within which pale figures and ornamental shapes float, fragments of sea creatures, bits of cloth that seem to flutter in a non-existent breeze, faces that are half there, half eaten by time. The overall impression is not of missing pieces, but of a story that has been allowed to fall silent, leaving behind only its gentlest images. Time begins to simplify here, narrowing down to very basic measures. You become aware of the rhythm of your own breathing more than anything else, the way your chest expands and softens. The slight pause at the top of the breath, the release, the feeling of air leaving your lungs with a faint, warming sigh. If you listen beyond your own breath, other sounds emerge. Somewhere nearby, there is the soft chime of metal on stone, perhaps a bronze strigil being placed carefully on the edge of a basin, its curved edge ringing just once before falling quiet. There is the subtle slap of water against skin as someone pours from a small jug over their shoulder or arm. Cloth moves over flesh, a towel drawn slowly along, absorbing what remains of the water and oil. All of these sounds are small, but the room catches them and holds them for a heartbeat longer than they would exist in open air, turning each into a soft, round echo that feels older than the moment that produced it. After a while, a stretch of time that you do not count and have no need to measure, you feel the impulse to move deeper into the baths. The warmth of the tepidarium has loosened something in you, untying knots you might not even have known were there, making each movement feel smoother and less conscious. You rise from the bench and feel, for an instant, the coolness of the air where your back pressed against the wall. The stone where you sat holds your imprint as a slightly warmer patch that will slowly blend back into the general heat, just as your presence and absence merge into the ongoing life of the building. At the edge of the room, another curtain hangs over a doorway, heavier than the one between the apoditarium and the corridor. Its fibers are damp at the bottom from the steam that breathes through from the other side. As you part the curtain, a deeper, more moist warmth rolls outward to meet you, touching your face and chest with a soft, invisible hand. The air that slips past the fabric is thicker, carrying the scent of hot water and heated stone, and within it is a delicate note of mineral, the smell of water that has traveled through pipes and channels, through clay and brick, before it ever saw the light of a lamp. Stepping through, you enter the caldarium, and at once you are wrapped in steam. The room seems to materialize around you as you go, first the pressure of the warm air on your skin, then the glow of lamps seen through a hazy veil, then the curved outlines of walls and the faint sheen of water. The caldarium is round and high, a circular chamber crowned by a domed ceiling that rises above like the inside of a shallow bowl. Because of the steam, you cannot see the dome clearly, its edges soften and blur, shadows merging into light in a way that makes the space feel both defined and infinite. Lamps in this room are set into niches around the curved wall. Each niche is like a small, shallow cave, catching the lamp's glow and focusing it outward. The flames themselves appear larger because of the steam, their golden halos expanded. They flicker more actively here, driven by the gentle currents of warm air rising and curling under the dome, but their movement is never violent, only wavering, like the light on the bottom of a shallow pool. Around the outer edge of the room, the floor rises into a ledge that runs along the wall, wide enough to walk on or sit upon. The stone here is hot to the touch, the heat coming up from beneath and out from behind, but not so intense that you must pull away. When you rest your hand on it for balance, your skin protests for a heartbeat, then accepts, then begins to draw comfort from it. Beyond that ledge lies the hot pool itself, set slightly deeper into the floor, its water dark and luminous all at once. The surface reflects the lamps in broken, trembling lines, each flame stretched into a wavering streak that lengthens and shortens as ripples pass. Steam rises from the pool in slow sheets, thicker near the surface and thinning as it reaches upward. It softens the edges of everything it touches, the far side of the pool, the curve of an arm resting on the stone rim, the outline of a step descending into the water. The air is saturated, pressing gently against your skin, droplets form on your lashes, on the fine hairs of your arms, on your lips. You move toward the steps that lead down into the water, your bare feet finding each warm tread by feel. The stone is wet here, but the pattern carved into it prevents slipping, a series of shallow grooves that channel the water into tiny, gleaming threads. As you set your first foot into the pool, the heat rushes in, almost startling after the moderate warmth of the tepidarium. It envelopes your ankle, then your shin, a band of intense sensation that bites for only a moment before your body recognizes it, remembers it, and begins to relax into it. You descend slowly, giving yourself time to adjust. With each step, more of you is claimed by the water, calves, knees, thighs, until at last you sink down so that it closes around your waist, then your ribs, then your shoulders, folding you into a continuous, liquid embrace. Now, in the caldarium, the outer world narrows to the circle of water around you, the cloud of steam above you, and the curved wall that holds it all. The rest of the building, the city outside, the sky, the streets, they all feel far away, as if they belong to a different kind of time. The water presses gently against your skin from all sides, its temperature even and unwavering. The heat seeps inward, layer by layer, easing its way through the surface, into muscle, into joint, into bone. Places that might have felt tight or tired earlier, a knot at the back of the neck, a stiffness in the lower back, begin to soften under that steady influence. You lean back against the curved wall of the pool, feeling the smooth, hot stone meet your shoulder blades. The contact is firm, supportive, without any sharp edges. The heat in the wall matches that of the water. So that you are surrounded by a continuity of warmth, engulfed in a kind of quiet brightness that has no color, only sensation. If you close your eyes, the lamplight still makes itself known. Behind your lids, it is not golden but a dim, reddish glow, pulsing gently as the flames shift. You can hear the water more clearly now, the small slaps as you move your arms, the tiny waves that run from your body to the far walls and back, the occasional drip from the unseen dome above as droplets of condensed steam gather and fall in slow, heavy drops. Behind the walls and beneath the floor, the hypocaust continues its invisible work. Hot air flows along channels lined with brick and stone, curling around low pillars that support the suspended floor, filling voids and creeping upward. In some places, the air is hottest near the furnace; in others, it has cooled slightly as it travels, offering milder warmth to rooms further away. You cannot hear this movement directly, but you sense it as a constant presence, a background hum that your body reads as security. The knowledge that the heat is generated far below, separated from you by layers of masonry and carefully planned spaces, makes the warmth feel controlled, safe. Time here stretches, becoming cloudy around the edges. You are aware of breaths, of the rise and fall of your chest, of the way the air entering your nose is saturated with moisture and heat, of the way it leaves a fraction cooler. The intervals between these sensations feel longer than they would outside. Each breath becomes its own small world. When you lift an arm from the water and rest it on the rim of the pool, you can watch droplets bead on your skin, gather, and then run in thin lines back down to the water. The droplets catch the lamplight, becoming tiny stars that appear for a second and then vanish, leaving only the faint trace of their path as warmth on your skin. After some time in the hot water, the air above the surface feels almost fresh by comparison, even though it is still heavy with steam. The upper half of your body senses a difference between water and air, between the enveloping heat below and the softer pressure above, and this contrast keeps you from sinking into complete languor. Near one curve of the wall, a raised circular basin holds cooler water. Its surface is still, the water fed from a hidden pipe that lets in a thin trickle, just enough to keep it from stagnating. The stone around the basin is damp and slightly cooler, touched by the lower temperature of the water within. You climb slowly up the steps, the water sliding away from your skin in warm sheets, leaving it briefly exposed to the thick air. Droplets cling and then make their own paths downward, tracing a web of tiny streams along your arms and chest, down your sides and legs. Standing before the basin, you listen to the quiet trickle of fresh water entering it and joining what is already there. You dip your hands into the cooler water, feeling the shock of the temperature difference in your fingers, in the thin bones and joints of your hands. The cold is not biting, but it is clear, clean, like a thought cutting through a haze. You scoop some of the water and let it pour slowly over the back of your neck, down along your shoulders. The sensation is sharp for a heartbeat, a brief, bright line rushing across hot skin, then it softens, spreading out, blending again into the general warmth. The body awakens slightly under this touch, but in a way that feels pleasant, like stretching after a long rest. In a small alcove off the main circle of the caldarium, reached by just a few steps along the inner ledge, a separate chamber opens. It is smaller, more enclosed, and the air inside is drier, heated to a greater degree by the masonry itself rather than by steam. You step into this space and feel at once the difference. The heat here is more intense on the skin, not because the temperature is dramatically higher, but because there is less moisture in the air to carry it. It feels like standing near a sun-warmed wall on a very still day, the warmth radiating steadily from all sides. Stone benches line the alcove, lower than those in the tepidarium. Their surfaces almost hot to the touch. When you sit, your skin protests for a second, then adapts, and the heat begins to seep upward through you, deeper and deeper, as if it were reaching for places that even the hot water could not quite touch. Breathing in this room is slower and thicker. The air enters your nose with weight, warms further as it travels down your throat, fills your chest with a density that is not uncomfortable but very present. Each breath feels like drawing in a portion of the heated stone itself, holding it, then letting it go again in a long, measured exhale. Outside this small chamber, down below, fire tenders will be watching the furnace, listening to its voice, the roar when they add new wood, the way it settles into a steadier sound as the logs catch and burn, the sigh as air is drawn through the glowing coals. They monitor vents and flues, adjusting them with skill learned over years, taming the raw force of burning wood into the gentle, sustained warmth that reaches you up here. In the alcove, though, all that activity becomes a distant, blended rumble, like a very slow drum heard from far away through layers of earth and stone. It is a sound without sharp edges, a continuous backing tone to the silence of your own breathing. When the heat has worked its way deep into your limbs, when your muscles feel almost boneless and your thoughts have grown slow and mild, you rise again and return to the caldarium's main circle. The shift from the dry heat of the alcove back into the steamy, water-laden air feels like stepping into a soft cloud. You walk along the warm ledge, past the pool with its shimmering surface and drifting steam, and make your way back to the curtain leading toward the tepidarium. As you push the fabric aside and step through, the air in the tepidarium feels cooler now in comparison, though if you had come directly from the outer world it would have seemed warm. The body's sense of temperature is not a fixed thing, it is always comparing, always remembering. Your skin, now thoroughly heated by water and stone, reads the tepidarium's air as almost refreshing, a gentle moderation between extremes. You return to one of the benches, perhaps the same one, perhaps another nearby. The stone greets you with a milder warmth than before, and you sit, feeling the slight stickiness of moisture on your skin gradually yielding to the drier air, turning to a fine coolness before disappearing altogether. On a small shelf near your bench, a bronze vessel of oil waits. Its surface has dulled slightly with age and repeated use, but in certain angles of lamplight it still gleams, revealing the careful shaping of its curves. You lift it and feel its weight, not heavy, but substantial enough to remind you that what it holds is dense and precious. When you pour a little of the oil into your palm, it comes out in a slow, smooth ribbon, thicker than water, with a faint, elegant fragrance. There is the richness of olives at its base, earthy and full, and above that a subtle blend of herbs, a hint of bay leaf, perhaps, and some subdued citrus that does not assert itself too strongly, only brightens the edge of the scent. You spread the oil over your skin with slow, deliberate motions, starting with your forearms, working it into the warmed flesh. The oil glides easily, then sinks in, leaving behind a softness that feels both protected and exposed. Over your shoulders and chest, the movement of your own hands becomes a kind of simple ritual, not focused on remedying any particular ache, but on acknowledging the body as something to be cared for. As it mingles with the thin film of moisture left by the water and steam, the oil forms a gentle sheen that catches the lamplight in tiny highlights. When you move, faint glimmers follow the curves of your arms, your collarbones, your legs, like threads of light tracing your outline. When you finally stand again, your body hums quietly with warmth, as if each limb and joint were humming its own low note in a soft, harmonious chord. There is a sense of being both loosened and gathered, your structure intact but more flexible, your awareness spread evenly rather than knotted in particular places. The path toward the cooler rooms lies on the opposite side of the tepidarium. As you walk there, you pass near another doorway from which a thinner, whiter mist emerges. The air near this opening carries a slightly different scent, still warm, still carrying the traces of oil and soap, but tinged more sharply with the smell of freshly poured water and the metallic hint of bronze tools. This is where, earlier in the day, attendants would have scraped oil and sweat from the skin of their clients with curved strigils, working methodically over backs and shoulders, arms and legs, then poured warm water to rinse away what they removed. Though the room is quieter now, you can still almost hear, in your mind's ear, the gentle rhythm of those movements, the scrape of metal against skin, the splash of water hitting stone, the murmur of voices mixing in the moist air. At this late hour, only a few low voices remain, perhaps a last exchange between attendant and bather, a word of thanks, a reply of habit. The room beyond the doorway holds their echo, but you do not enter. You simply pass, your steps light, the sight of the white mist and the knowledge of its function another small thread in the larger tapestry of the baths. The floor ahead begins to cool by tiny degrees with each step you take away from the hypocaust's most heated regions. The air grows clearer, less dense with moisture. The soundscape shifts too, the murmurs of the tepidarium recede, and a different kind of quiet begins to gather ahead, a quiet that feels larger, more open. You are walking toward the frigidarium, the cold room, the place where water returns to its clearer, sharper aspect. The corridor leading there is lined more simply, its walls less adorned, as if the architects knew that the space at the end required its own kind of emphasis and did not need intricate preparation. When you reach the threshold, you feel the change before you even see the hall. A coolness touches your face, sliding along your cheeks and down your neck in a thin, insistent stream. It is not the violent cold of winter winds, but its nature is different from the warmth behind you, clearer, more defined. It has a direction, almost a shape. You step into the frigidarium and the difference becomes immediate and complete. The air is much cooler than in the rooms you have just left, cool enough that your warm skin reacts at once, tightening slightly, making you aware of every inch of yourself exposed to it. The hall is broad and tall, a large rectangular space with a high ceiling composed of intersecting vaults. The curves of the vaults rise and meet in soft ridges, each line catching what light there is and turning it into faint highlights that run across the ceiling like pale, sleeping rivers. In the daytime, sunlight would stream in through high windows and fall in bright planes across the floor and water, lighting the hall in sharp contrasts, but now the only illumination comes from a few lamps set in wall niches and near the water's edge. Their flames draw small circles of brightness on the polished surfaces, leaving the rest in a cool penumbra. At the center of the hall lies the cold pool. Its surface is perfectly still, an expanse of dark clarity stretching from one side to the other. The reflections of the vaults above and the small points of light from the lamps are almost perfect, distorted only by the occasional tiny wave from a droplet falling in or a faint current moving below the surface. Your footsteps as you approach the pool are different here. The floor is of smooth stone, and the sound rings out more distinctly, a clear, hollow tapping that travels upward into the vastness of the hall. The vaults catch that sound and toss it back to you from several directions at once, so that each step seems to come from your feet and from the air around you. The effect is not overwhelming, only gently disorienting, reminding you of the size of the space you have entered. You sit on the edge of the pool for a while, as many have done before you. The stone at the rim is smooth, worn down by bodies and hands and the repeated pressure of weight and movement. When you place your hands on it to steady yourself, it feels cool and firm, a reliable presence. You let your feet slide into the water, down onto the submerged step just below the surface. The cold wraps around your ankles like a ring of clear metal, sharp and precise. After the comprehensive warmth of the caldarium and the tempered comfort of the tepidarium, this sensation is bright, pure, and undeniably awake. The first instinct of your body is to pull back from it, but because the rest of you still carries the deep heat of the earlier rooms, that initial impulse is quickly replaced by a different feeling, something like relief. The heat and cold meet in your lower legs, and the interaction between them is vivid but not painful, as if your nerves are being reminded, gently but firmly, of their full range. Slowly, as you leave your feet in the water, the sharpness of the cold softens. What was a sudden shock becomes a steady, bracing presence. You begin to feel the fine details of the sensation, the exact contour of your ankles, the precise spot where the water level ends and the air begins, the faint, slow dulling of the intense contrast as equilibrium is found. When you slide fully into the pool, the cold enfolds you like a vast, loose garment. The water closes around your calves, your thighs, your torso, your chest, and with each increment you breathe a little more carefully, allowing your body to adjust at a manageable pace. There is a single, bright moment as the water reaches your ribs when your breath catches slightly, an involuntary reaction to the sudden immersion. But because your core is still gently warmed, the feeling washes through you and then settles into something more stable. Your heart beats a little faster for a while, not with alarm but with the quickening that comes when the body is reminded of its own resilience. You can stand in the pool with your feet on the floor and the water up to your shoulders, or you can lean back and float, letting your head rest against the smooth edge. In either case, the cold is present but not hostile. It seems to strip away the last drowsiness of the hot rooms, leaving a kind of clarity in its wake. Sound behaves differently here. When you move, the water slaps softly against your skin and the marble sides of the pool, and those sounds echo in the high space, returning to your ears as gentle, rounded reflections. When droplets fall from your hair or fingers back into the pool, each one makes a small plink that seems amplified by the hall's emptiness, then quickly fades into the general, low-level hush. The frigidarium, at this hour, feels like a temple to quiet thought. The decorations on its walls, painted panels bordered with geometric patterns, niches that once held statues of gods or emperors, carved motifs of plants and scrolling vines, are visible but subdued. In the low light, their details soften, becoming more like suggestions than commands. You can make out the curve of a laurel wreath, the outline of a draped figure, the faint remnant of a painted garment. Yet none of these images push themselves upon you. They rest, as the hall itself rests, in a state of dignified stillness. During the busier times of day, this room would have held many voices. People would have come and gone in clusters, their speech bouncing off the vaults and mixing into a constant murmur, punctuated by laughter, by splashes, by the occasional shout. Men would have stood along the edges in pairs or small groups, discussing trade or politics, philosophy or the trivialities of daily life, while younger bathers plunged into the water with noisy enthusiasm. Now, all of that noise is absent. Only the shape of the room, the arrangement of the benches, the worn patches on the floor hint at those earlier gatherings. All that energy has drained away, leaving behind an emptier space that feels open and receptive, as if it is now available for a different kind of presence, not conversation, but contemplation. Somewhere beyond one of the side doors or corridors linked to this hall, there are other spaces dedicated to quieter pursuits still, rooms lined with shelves where scrolls are stored, small libraries attached to the baths. In those rooms, the air would smell of parchment and ink, of wood and oil, perhaps with a faint hint of wax from tablets used for writing. Within those shelves would rest many texts, histories of campaigns far from this city, speeches carefully composed and delivered in grand forums, poems about love and harvests and the caprices of the gods, observations about stars and weather and the workings of the body. Even now, at this hour, those scrolls are simply there, motionless and patient, holding their words folded tightly within them like seeds. The knowledge of those rooms, even if you do not see them directly tonight, adds a layer of depth to the baths as a whole. This complex is not only a place where the body is washed and warmed, but also a place where minds can be fed, where thought can stretch and wander within the same protective walls. The building becomes, in your awareness, something more than a collection of pools and furnaces. It begins to resemble a body in its own right, with its hot and cold parts, its circulating channels, its places for exertion and for rest, its hidden heart where the fires burn, its quieter chambers where words and ideas are stored. Within this larger body, you are like a single drop of water moving through a network of vessels, passing from one temperature to another, from one texture of air to the next, from noise to quiet and back again. For now, in the frigidarium, you are in one of its cooler, more spacious organs, suspended in clear, still water under a high, breathing ceiling. You float, or stand, or move slowly from one side of the pool to the other. The cold holds you with a steady, unchanging hand. Your senses feel sharpened, but your mind, paradoxically, feels softer, not racing, not agitated, merely awake and receptive. The contrast between the earlier heat and this present coolness has smoothed something inside you. The edges of the day have been worn down, not by force, but by the simple, continuous presence of water and stone and managed fire. After some unhurried time in the cold water, you finally rise and make your way toward the edge of the pool. The decision to leave is not driven by discomfort, rather, it feels like the natural completion of a cycle, as if your body simply knows that it has taken enough from this particular element and is ready to move on. You climb the steps slowly, feeling the water slide down your skin in cool sheets that leave brief trails of sensation. As you emerge, the air of the hall feels different again, no longer shockingly cool compared to the water, but almost mild, a halfway state between the cold of the pool and the heat you remember from the inner rooms. Droplets cling to your arms and shoulders, to your chest and legs, then begin to gather and fall in tiny, clear rivulets that patter onto the stone. Each small impact makes a soft sound, easily lost in the hall's vastness but still present, one more minor note in the quiet music of the space. You do not rush to dry yourself. Instead, you let the air do its work, allowing the remaining heat you carry from the caldarium and tepidarium to meet the coolness of the frigidarium's atmosphere. Where they meet, a new balance is struck. Your skin tingles briefly, then settles into a comfortable middle temperature, neither hot nor cold, but pleasantly aware of itself. You walk along the perimeter of the hall, following the line of the pool. The stone under your feet feels smooth and faintly warmed by your own passage, though the general coolness of the room still prevails. Here and there, smaller basins are set into the floor or the walls, separate from the main pool. Some hold water that is even colder, meant to give a brief, startling jolt to those who seek it. You do not need that extra shock now. Your body has already traveled far enough in the spectrum of temperature. Still, as you pass one particularly clear basin, you let your fingers trail through its surface. The water parts around them and then closes again, sending out a series of small, circular ripples. Those rings spread outward, distorting for a moment the reflection of a high arch above, turning its simple curve into a trembling, silvered shape. Then the surface smooths, and the arch becomes once more a still, mirrored line. The movement is small, almost insignificant, but in the quiet of the hall it feels like a complete event, a beginning, a middle, and an end contained in a handful of seconds and a span of a few hand-widths. Beyond the frigidarium lies a doorway leading to the natatio, the great open-air pool. You move toward it, feeling again that subtle anticipation that comes when one space gives way to another, when the texture of the air promises to change. As you pass through, the roof lifts away, and you are once more under the open sky. The natatio is like a courtyard of water, broad and long, embraced on three sides by high walls and colonnades, and on the fourth by a lower stretch that opens toward a small garden. The water in the natatio lies wide and still, a cool surface that reflects the night. It is cooler than the frigidarium's pool, having given up more of its warmth to the open air, but its coolness is softened now by the lingering heat in your body. You sense its presence not as a challenge but as a calm, expansive sheet of clarity. A thin veil of mist hovers just above the surface, especially near the edges where the water meets the stone. The mist is not dense, it is more like a breath made visible, a faint, white film that moves gently when the air stirs, catching the faint light from the lamps in the colonnade and turning it into a soft glow. The high walls around three sides of the natatio are decorated with blind arches and shallow niches. In daylight, those architectural details would cast strong, graphic shadows. Now they appear more as variations in darkness, subtle shifts in depth. The upper portions of the walls, closer to the sky, seem slightly lighter than the lower parts, reflecting the soft illumination of stars and whatever faint light the city sends upward. On the fourth side, the boundary breaks into a smaller garden, where the shapes of low trees and shrubs stand against the sky. Their leaves are dark, their branches a series of delicate silhouettes that sway faintly if a breeze passes. The garden does not draw attention to itself, it simply exists as a softer fringe to the stony enclosure, a reminder that even in such a constructed space, living things grow and change. The colonnade that runs along the sides of the pool holds a few lamps, spaced at intervals. Some are set into wall niches, others placed on projecting brackets. Their light spills onto the stone floor and the nearest water, creating narrow bands of brightness. In those bands, you can see the texture of the paving, the slight roughness meant to prevent slipping. The shallow grooves that channel water away. You walk along the edge of the pool, your feet making a quieter sound here than in the frigidarium, the open air allowing the noise to escape upward rather than trapping it for echoes. The stone feels cooler underfoot, but the air seems milder after the crispness of the cold room, especially as your skin has now found its own equilibrium. You choose a place at the edge, a few steps down from the corner, and lower yourself to sit, facing the water. The stone is slightly damp beneath you, and it yields a hint of the day's sun, a memory of warmth stored and then slowly given away over the long evening. You let your feet slide into the water again, this time on the submerged steps of the Natasho. The coolness that meets your skin is softer now, less of a surprise, folding easily around your ankles and calves like a familiar cloth. Leaning back on your hands, you tilt your face upward toward the sky. The stars above are more numerous than they appeared between the close-packed roofs of the streets. Some shine more strongly, steady points of light, others are faint, barely there, like grains of dust scattered across a vast, dark surface. A few small clouds drift slowly overhead, pale smudges that move with unhurried grace. Where they cross in front of the stars, they soften and dim them for a while, then move on, revealing them again. The night above the Natasho feels large and deep, but not overwhelming. You are aware of it at the edges of your perception, a vast dome within which your smaller experiences take place. Closer to you, the Natasho speaks in its own, quieter language. The water laps gently against the steps where your feet rest, making a soft, repetitive sound, a subdued, liquid kissing of stone. Somewhere further along the edge, where a concealed conduit lets in a continuous trickle of fresh water, you hear a faint, higher note, the thin, silver sound of falling water impacting the pool, a tiny waterfall whose scale matches the scale of this still hour. Occasionally, a faint breeze glides across the courtyard. When it does, you can feel it on your damp skin as a cool caress, and you can see its passage on the water in the way the mist shifts and the surface breaks into small, moving patterns of light and dark. The reflections of the colonnade's arches and columns stretch and wobble, then slowly reassemble when the air calms. The sounds from the city reach you here in a slightly different way than they did in the closed halls. With no roof to catch and return them, they arrive softer, more diluted, as if they have been strained through layers of air. Somewhere far away, a cart passes over cobblestones, its wheels producing a low, rhythmic rattle that rises and then fades. A voice calls out, not urgently, just a late word shared between neighbors or travelers. A dog barks once, twice, and then stops, as if reminded by the quiet that it too should rest. These sounds do not intrude, they barely touch the edge of your awareness, like distant ripples on a far part of the same, vast pool of night. After a time, you rise from the edge of the Natasho and climb the short flight of stairs leading up into the surrounding colonnade. The stone under your feet here is slightly warmer than at the water's edge, having been less exposed to the cool water and more to the residual heat of the day. You walk between the columns, their smooth shafts alternating between shadow and narrow bands of light. Each column rises from its base with a sense of calm strength, its capital supporting the beams that hold up the partial roof. The rhythm of these columns as you pass between them is soothing, dark, light, like a slow breathing of stone. Along one side of the colonnade, a great exedra opens, a semicircular recess cut into the wall, its curve embracing a space lined with benches. The half-dome above gathers sound and focuses it inward. In the brighter hours of day, this would have been a place for conversation, for lectures, for recitations and debates. Now it is a quiet shell of stone, holding only the faintest whispers of past words. Inside the exedra, a single lamp still burns in a niche. Its light is modest but sufficient, spreading a circular patch of warmth across the benches and the lower part of the curved wall. Beyond this circle, the upper half of the dome recedes into shadow, its outlines only guessed at. You step inside and sit on one of the benches, letting your back find the natural lean of the stone. The seat has been smoothed by many bodies before yours, and it supports you with simple ease. When you breathe in, the sound of your own inhalation seems slightly amplified, not louder exactly, but more present, as if the dome above were listening and then returning the sound to you in a softened, rounded form. If you exhale a little more deeply, you hear that exhale return too, delayed by a fraction of a heartbeat, the edges of the sound smoothed out. The effect is like sharing your breathing with the room, as though it is breathing along with you, its stone chest rising and falling in time with your own. From this sheltered vantage point, you are less aware of the open sky and more aware of the enclosure of the baths themselves. The building becomes, again, a world of its own, connected to the outside but not defined by it. After a while, you leave the exedra and follow a doorway that leads away from the open pool and deeper into the interior. The corridor you enter now is narrower and simpler than the grand halls. The walls are plain, coated in smooth plaster without much decoration, the lines straight and clean. The floor is still carefully laid with stone, each slab cut to fit tightly against the next, but there is less emphasis on ornament here. These are passages meant to connect spaces rather than serve as stages for display. Their plainness has its own quiet beauty, the small signs of wear on the lower parts of the walls where shoulders and hands have brushed, the faint polish on the floor where countless feet have passed. Along the corridor, small vents pierce the walls in regular intervals. Some breathe out warm air, a gentle exhalation from rooms connected to the hypocaust, others send in cooler currents from spaces closer to the outer walls or to open courts. You can feel these currents on your skin as you move past, a patch of slightly warmer air here, a brief thread of coolness there, each one a reminder of the hidden, continuous dialogue of temperatures within the building. As you walk, you pass by a doorway partly closed by a wooden panel painted in simple colors. Through the gap, you glimpse a different kind of room, shelves climbing the walls in orderly tiers, each shelf crowded with rolled scrolls bound with cords, their ends facing outward. On some, small tags or labels hang, tiny markers indicating what lies within. A pair of lamps burns on a central table, their light steady and concentrated. It falls across a few open scrolls, where careful lines of ink march along in columns, the letters regular and precise. Nearby lies a wax tablet, its surface bearing the faint impressions of words that may have been written, erased, and written again. The air that reaches you from this room carries a distinct fragrance, the dry, papery smell of parchment and papyrus, the sharper tang of ink, the faint sweetness of the wood from the shelves, and the mild, comforting presence of oil from the lamps. You do not enter the room, you simply pause at the doorway long enough to feel the calm that emanates from within. The order of the scrolls, the quiet light, the absence of motion all combine into a stillness that is different from that of the pools. It is a stillness made of thought rather than water, of words waiting for eyes to bring them to life. Knowing that such rooms exist within the baths changes the way you feel about your own presence here. You are no longer in a place devoted only to the care of the body, you are in a place where body and mind, muscle and language, heat and thought are all given their spaces. Moving on, you follow a shallow ramp that curves gently downward, leading you closer to the service levels. The temperature shifts subtly as you descend. The air grows warmer, but in a different way from the tepidarium or caldarium. Here, the warmth carries with it the unmistakable scent of smoke and burning wood. Richer and darker than the soft, washed heat of the rooms above. Your bare feet feel the change too. The stone of the floor becomes warmer underfoot in patches, as if the heat from below is not evenly distributed, but rises more strongly in some places than in others. You step across these warmer spots and cooler ones, feeling the invisible map of the furnace's influence through the soles of your feet. At the end of the ramp, you find yourself before a low, arched opening in the wall, closed off by a metal grill. The iron bars are dark, their surfaces stained by smoke and heat over countless days. When you draw a little nearer, you can feel a faint wave of warmth coming through the gaps, not intense enough to burn, but steady and unmistakable. Beyond the grill, there is mostly darkness, broken only by a faint, reddish flicker that brightens and dims in an irregular rhythm. That is the prefurnium, the mouth of the great furnace. Somewhere inside, fire is working, hidden from direct sight but evident in its effects. You stand there for a few breaths, listening as carefully as you can. At first, you hear nothing distinct, only a general low hum that might be the sound of your own blood in your ears. Then, as you give your attention more fully, the furnace's voice becomes clearer. You catch the deep, continuous roar of flames being drawn along the furnace's throat. It is not a wild, uncontrolled roar, but a regulated one, its intensity managed by vents and dampers. Under that, you hear the occasional soft clatter as a piece of charcoal or wood shifts, collapsing inward as it burns away, sending up a small cloud of sparks that you cannot see from here but can imagine. The sound is strangely soothing. It is the sound of work being done on your behalf, of wood giving itself up to become heat, of engineers and attendants having designed a system where raw fire is turned into something that never reaches you directly, only through layers of stone and air, tempered and refined. Standing before the furnace, you are briefly aware of the entire vertical structure of the baths, the fire here, the channels above, the warm floors and walls, the rooms where people bathe and rest, and then the open sky beyond. You are in the middle of a tall column of elements, earth and fire and water and air, all aligned to create comfort and ease. After a few more breaths, you turn away from the prefurnium, leaving it to its continuous labor. You climb another set of steps that leads you back toward the more familiar, public spaces of the baths. When you emerge once again near the palestra, the open court looks different from when you first saw it. The night has deepened, and the few lamps still burning around the colonnade are fewer and dimmer. The central fountain continues its soft murmur, but the circle of light around it has shrunk, the lamp nearby having burned lower. You step out under the sky, feeling the open air against your skin. After the layered temperatures of the interior, this outdoor air feels simple, unified. It is cooler than the rooms you have just left, but your body still carries so much warmth within it that the difference feels gentle, almost protective. The stones of the courtyard, away from the hypocaust's reach, have cooled more. When you walk across them, your feet feel the mild chill in the surfaces that have been given back to the night. Yet the chill remains at the level of sensation, never pushing into discomfort. Your own warmth meets it and transforms it into a kind of neutral support, a reminder of the larger cycle of heating and cooling that the building and the world follow. Across the courtyard, another pair of doors stands slightly ajar, leading into smaller, more intimate rooms. The lamplight from within spills through the narrow openings and onto the stones outside in thin wedges, like pages of light sliding between volumes of shadow. Curiosity draws you there, not in the sense of urgency, but as a natural extension of wandering, another small turn within the same enclosed universe. You pass through the doorway and into a passage that leads to these quieter chambers. These rooms are lower ceilinged and cozier than the grand halls. Their walls are closer, their scale more closely matched to individual bodies. The ceilings are painted with simple designs, often garlands or patterns of leaves, and the walls bear frescoes of gardens, of birds perched on branches, of small architectural scenes with fountains and columns. The paintings are not bright at this hour. The few lamps burning here cast local pools of light that illuminate parts of the scenes and leave other parts in shadow. A bird might be half visible, its head lit and its tail lost in darkness. A painted path may begin clearly and then disappear into a band of dimness where the lamp's reach ends. The effect is not disorienting, but rather intimate. The painted scenes feel less like full landscapes and more like glimpses, suggestions of gardens and distant vistas, fragments of worlds that you can imagine completing with your mind if you wish, or simply let remain incomplete, like dreams half remembered. In one of these small chambers, a narrow pool runs along the wall, only knee-deep, its surface almost level with a low stone ledge. The water within is warm, not as hot as the caldarium, but decidedly above the air temperature of the room. As you approach, you notice a delicate scent rising from it, laurel, perhaps, and sage, infused into the water to create a mild, herbal vapor. The scent is not strong, not the assertive perfume of concentrated oils, but a gentle, green presence, like standing near a shrub on a warm day and catching its fragrance in passing. It mixes with the ever-present mineral smell of stone and the faint, clean trace of the soaps and oils used by the attendants. You trail your fingers through the surface of the pool. The water yields easily, folding around your hand, holding it briefly before letting go when you lift it out again. Small ripples spread outward from your touch, running along the length of the pool, distorting for a moment the reflection of a painted branch heavy with fruit on the wall behind. In another nearby room, you see benches arranged around a central basin mounted on a pedestal. The basin is shaped like a shallow bowl, its rim smooth from use. Here, attendants might once have washed a visitor's feet, or rubbed oil into tired calves and shins, working slowly and methodically to ease away the heaviness of walking or standing. Even though the room is empty now, the arrangement of the benches, the position of the basin, and the faint smell of oil that still lingers in the stone allow you to imagine the quiet gestures that would have unfolded here. A foot lifted, held firmly but gently, hands moving in circular motions, pressing and releasing, water being poured from a small jug and flowing in thin streams over skin and stone. You do not sit in these rooms or linger long in them. Your path continues, drawn once more toward the central warmth of the tepidarium, which has become, in some unspoken way, the heart of your journey. When you return there, the room feels both familiar and subtly altered. The number of lamps has diminished, some have been pinched out or allowed to burn down, their wicks submerged in oil. The remaining flames are lower, closer to their own extinguishing, and their light is softer, more amber, more fragile. You settle onto one of the benches again, perhaps the same, perhaps one nearby that now stands empty. The stone greets your body with a steady warmth, not as intense as before but still comforting, like embers that remain warm under a thin layer of ash. The lamp nearest you burns with a small, steady flame. The pool of oil within its clay body has shrunk, revealing more of the curved floor of the lamp. The flame leans slightly to one side, its tip occasionally producing a thin thread of smoke that curls upward and disappears into the dimness. On the wall near the lamp, a patch of plaster is lit more brightly than the rest. Within that patch, the colors of the decorative painting glow more vividly, a fragment of a vine, a hint of red fruit, a swirl of pattern, while everything beyond fades into a muted dusk. The light trembles in subtle fluctuations as the flame moves, and the painted shapes seem to breathe with it. Inhaling brightness, exhaling shadow. You rest your forearms on your thighs and let your head bow slightly forward, not from exhaustion so much as from a sense of deep unwinding. The muscles in your neck are no longer holding your head up against any strain, they are simply supporting it in a loose, relaxed way. Behind your closed eyes, the images of the rooms you have visited tonight drift past in unhurried procession. The caldarium's steam and glowing walls, the frigidarium's clear pool and echoing vaults, the natato's open sky and drifting mist, the little herb-scented pool in the smaller chamber, the glimpse of scrolls in the quiet library, the faint, hidden glow of the furnace behind its grill, all of these impressions exist now not as precise, sharp pictures, but as softened shapes and textures. They layer over one another in your mind, forming something like a tapestry of space and temperature and light. None of them demands your attention, they are content to lie there, overlapping gently, ready to surface if your thoughts drift toward them, equally ready to sink back if your mind grows quieter still. Your breathing slows even further. Each inhale is long and smooth, filling your chest without effort, bringing with it the warm air of the room, tinged with oil and stone and a faint sweetness of something herbal left in the air. Each exhale leaves a little of your remaining tension behind, flowing out from your lungs and dissolving into the general warmth. Somewhere in the distance, a door closes with a soft, final sound, wood meeting frame, stone meeting stone. Footsteps pass along a corridor, the rhythm of their approach and retreat muted by thick walls and layers of air. You can hear the quiet voices of attendants, fewer now, exchanging a last few sentences about tasks nearly completed. Clay touches clay as lamps are moved, checked, or emptied. The soft brush of a broom travels across stone, gathering the day's tiny scatterings of dust and hair and dropped fragments into small piles that will be removed before the next day begins. All of these sounds reach you as if they have passed through several layers of cloth. They are there, but they are distant, gentle, without any demand on your attention. They are simply part of the building's own process of settling, of preparing itself for its own kind of sleep. In the apoditarium, your folded clothes wait where you left them, still holding the faint scent of the street and the outer world, still shaped around the emptiness where your body had been. They can wait a little longer. There is no need to hurry toward them, no pressing obligation tugging at you from beyond the walls. Eventually, your body does what it knows. Without a conscious decision, you find yourself sliding slowly down the bench, until your back is fully against its warm surface and your legs are stretched out before you. Your hands rest loosely at your sides, palms open, fingers gently curved. From this reclined position, the ceiling of the tepidarium appears farther away, its curve more expansive. The painted figures and patterns feel more distant too, as if they are floating on the underside of some shallow sea of air. The patches of light from the lamps below reach them in softer bands, creating islands of faint color surrounded by shadow. You watch the way the light moves across the irregularities of the plaster, how tiny cracks catch it and become momentary lines of brightness, how the shallow relief of the moldings creates thin rims of glow on one side and deeper shade on the other. The flame of the nearby lamp, though small, is enough to send a steady stream of tiny changes upward. When it leans, the shadows on the ceiling deepen in one place and lighten in another. When it straightens, they rebalance. It is a slow, continual dance between light and surface, taking place on a scale that is both insignificant and strangely compelling. As the minutes unwind, the boundaries of your body seem to soften. The warmth of the bench under your back and the warmth of your own muscles begin to feel like a single, continuous field. Your arms and legs feel heavier, not in a burdensome way, but as if they are sinking into a soft medium that welcomes their weight. Thoughts, when they arise, come as gentle fragments rather than structured narratives. A column here, the curve of its capital. The sensation of hot water on your skin in the caldarium. The clear cold of the frigidarium's pool, remembered now as a bright, clean feeling rather than a precise temperature. The open sky over the Natatio, with its slow-moving clouds and quiet stars. These fragments drift across your awareness like leaves on a slow current. They do not cling or pull, they pass and then move on, leaving behind only a faint, pleasant aftertaste. There is no need to follow any of them, no need to build them into anything more than they are. The building around you seems to breathe on its own. Floors hold warmth and release it in low, continuous waves. Walls retain heat in their cores and offer it up slowly to the rooms they enclose. Pools cool the air above them and are warmed in turn by the bodies they hold and the channels that feed them. The furnace below continues its steady burning, the chimneys and vents continue their complicated, invisible work. You are one warm shape among many in this structure, one moving fragment within its larger, almost organic rhythm. For now, you are completely aligned with it, your breath matching its imagined breath, your slowing thoughts matching its slow changes in temperature and light. At some point, you could not say when, the impulse to move returns, gentle but persistent. You do not rush to respond to it, you simply allow it to gather slowly, until the idea of rising feels as natural as the idea of remaining had felt before. Eventually, you sit up, feeling the stone against your back slip away, leaving a fading patch of warmth in its place. Your limbs are heavier than when you first entered, but their heaviness is not fatigue, it is the weight of deep relaxation, of tension released. You stand and walk, unhurried, back toward the curtain that leads to the apoditarium. The fabric, when you brush it aside, feels cooler than the air in the tepidarium, its threads saturated with the moisture they have caught from countless exhalations of steam. Beyond the curtain, the undressing room waits as you left it, though it too has changed subtly with the passing time. A few lamps have been extinguished or allowed to go out. The remaining ones burn lower, their light pooling in smaller, more intimate circles on the floor and benches. Your folded clothes sit where you placed them, edges softened by the shadow. The sandals you left neatly beneath the bench still rest there, their shapes patiently waiting for the return of your feet. You dress slowly, not out of reluctance, but because everything in this place seems to encourage slowness. The cloth feels slightly cooler against your skin than the air of the tepidarium, but the heat that lingers in your muscles warms it quickly, creating a comfortable middle ground. As you pull on each garment, you feel the subtle shift from the direct contact of air and stone and water to the filtered sensation that clothing brings. It is not constricting, it is simply different, another layer between your body and the world. When you slide your feet back into your sandals and fasten the straps, you notice how accustomed your skin has become to the direct contact with stone. The leather feels foreign for a brief moment, then familiar again as the old pressure points settle where they always have. Before you leave, you pause by one of the lamps in the apoditarium, drawn by its small, persistent light. Its pool of oil is shallow now, the curved floor of the lamp visible beneath the remaining liquid. The flame is tiny, a thin, elongated tongue leaning to one side. Now and then, a little smoke curls up from its tip, faint and gray, disappearing quickly in the dim air. You watch the way the light forms a miniature sun in the surface of the oil, a bright reflection that shivers with every movement of the flame. On the wall, the lamp paints an elongated, trembling shape, part flame, part container, part shadow, that seems to hover above the niche like a quiet, living thing. The lamp is simple, made of ordinary clay shaped by hands you will never know, fired in a kiln of heat not unlike the furnace that powers the baths. It exists to do a straightforward task, to hold oil, to support a wick, to give light. Yet in this moment, in this room, at this hour, it feels like a small, important center, one concentrated spot of certainty in a world that has grown very soft and blurred around the edges. Then you turn toward the outer door. In the entrance hall, the porter is still at his post, though his posture has grown more drowsy. His shoulders slump slightly, and his head tilts forward, but at the sound of your approach he straightens, the movement slow but definite. His own lamp, placed on a slab of stone beside him, burns lower than before. The circle of light it casts is smaller, its edges darker. Still, within that circle, his face is visible. You see the same calm recognition in his eyes, the same acceptance of your presence as something expected, something that fits into the pattern of his night. He offers a quiet nod, and you return it. No words pass between you. In the hush of the hour, speech would feel too sharp, too heavy. The small exchange of gesture is enough to acknowledge the shared world of stone and water and fire that you have inhabited together for this brief interval. You step over the threshold and out into the street. The air meets you in a cool embrace, thinner and less layered than that within the baths. Your body, still carrying the deep warmth of the hypocaust and the pools, responds by letting some of that warmth bleed slowly into the night. The effect is not uncomfortable, it is like walking wrapped in a cloak that gradually becomes less thick. The paving stones outside are familiar. But they feel different to your feet now after so much time spent on the various surfaces within. They are cooler, drier, their small irregularities sharper and more distinct. Yet your warmed muscles and joints make each step easy, each movement smooth. Behind you, the great walls of the thermae rise into the dark, their outlines solid and sure against the sky. Most of their windows are dark now, their internal lamps extinguished or nearly so. Only a few faint glows remain, high up or in some tucked-away corner, like the last embers of a fire in a wide hearth. You know that inside, the baths will continue their own slow processes. The furnace will burn for a while longer, then be allowed to die down. The hypocaust's channels will cool gradually, the stored heat in the floors and walls radiating outward into the empty rooms. The waters will lose some of their warmth to the night air and gain some from the still warm masonry around them. Attendants will finish cleaning, will empty basins, tidy benches, check doors, and finally leave, closing the great doors until morning. As you walk away, the sounds of the city grow just a little more distinct. A late voice drifts from an upper window, a few words you cannot distinguish. Somewhere, a laugh surfaces and then is swallowed again by distance. A cart rumbles slowly along a nearby street, its wheels sending up a low, rolling sound that passes and recedes. The sky above the roofs is darker now, the faint remnant of twilight completely gone. The stars are clearer, though a light haze from the city's countless small fires softens them slightly. You move along streets that you know, past doorways and corners you could trace even with your eyes closed, but tonight everything feels padded, cushioned by the bathhouse's lingering influence. The road ahead seems shorter than it sometimes does, though you are not walking faster. Perhaps it is because your mind is no longer busy measuring distance or thinking about tasks. Your attention rests lightly on the simple sensations of walking, the contact of your soles with stone, the movement of joints and muscles, the gentle swing of your arms. Houses on either side show mostly dark windows now. Here and there, one still glows faintly with lamplight, a small, rectangular sign that someone inside remains awake. You pass them without slowing, without curiosity. The lives behind those windows feel distant and sealed, and you have no need to imagine them tonight. A dog lying in a doorway raises its head as you approach. Its eyes catch a bit of starlight, or some faint reflection, and glimmer for a moment. It regards you quietly, perhaps scenting the mixture of steam and smoke and oil lingering on your skin and hair. Finding nothing alarming in you, it lets its head sink back onto its paws and closes its eyes again. Your own doorway comes into view, familiar in scale and shape, the stone of the threshold worn down at the center by many entries and exits. You cross it, and the air inside your dwelling greets you with its own particular smell, a mixture of wood and plaster, of the objects you keep there, perhaps the faintest echo of whatever was last cooked or heated. After the spaciousness and complexity of the baths, your room feels smaller, simpler, but not confining. It is a shell, a container, a place where the warmth you bring from the thermae can settle and slowly diffuse. The bed, when you reach it, looks the same as always, simple coverings, familiar shape, but tonight it seems to hold an extra invitation. Your body, already softened and loosened, responds instantly to the promise of lying down. You sit first, undoing whatever needs to be undone, loosening what needs to be loosened, then ease yourself onto the bed. As you stretch out, you feel the residual warmth in your muscles spreading across the mattress, seeping into the fabric beneath you. The room is mostly dark, lit perhaps only by a small lamp or by the faint spill of starlight through a narrow opening. After the dimness of the baths, this darkness feels straightforward and kind. There are fewer shadows here, fewer surfaces to catch and reflect light. The edges of the room dissolve quickly into black. And your attention turns inward almost of its own accord. You close your eyes, and behind them there is still a gentle redness, the echo of lamplight and firelight and the glow of heated stone. That redness fades slowly, like embers cooling, until it becomes a soft, uniform darkness threaded with occasional, brief afterimages of the day, or rather, of the night just passed in the baths. Inside you, the memory of the thermae becomes a kind of inner hypocaust. The warmth you absorb in the caldarium, in the tepidarium, from the heated floors and benches, now circulates through your body in quieter, slower ways. You feel a gentle heat in your chest, in your abdomen, in your back, as if these parts of you are small rooms storing the last of the day's fire. Your limbs are like corridors where the warmth moves more slowly, touching joints and muscles as it passes. Your head feels lighter, cooler, like a high, vaulted ceiling receiving the last, faint traces of rising heat. The echo of the caldarium steam remains not as a wetness but as a memory of being enveloped, cradled in softness. The bright cold of the frigidarium is now a clear, quiet space in your thoughts, a place where everything feels sharp and clean and very far away from worry. The open sky over the natatio hovers somewhere behind your closed eyes, a wide, calm astral dome that you can sense without needing to see. Your breathing finds the same rhythm it had in the warm rooms. Inhale, long, slow, filling the lungs without effort, bringing with it air that now is cooler but feels gentle. Exhale, equally slow, leaving the body in a smooth stream, carrying away the last bits of tension that might still be coiled somewhere hidden. With each breath, the world narrows further. The edges of your body, once highlighted by the contrasts of hot and cold water, by the contact with stone and air, begin to blur. You no longer feel individual fingers or toes as distinct entities, you feel instead the general, pleasant heaviness of your limbs, the supportive pressure of the bed beneath you. Thoughts, when they come, arrive as very soft impressions. A curve of a column under lamplight. A droplet falling from the caldarium's dome into its pool. The sound of your feet on the frigidarium's floor. The faint smell of laurel from the narrow pool in the smaller room. The glimpse of scrolls in the lamplit library. None of these impressions insist on becoming anything larger. They do not organize themselves into stories or demands. They drift in, linger briefly, and then drift out again, leaving behind the calm they brought with them. Beyond these internal impressions, the image of the bathhouse itself lingers, not in detail but as a whole, a structure of stone and water and fire, with its warm and cool parts, its open and closed spaces, its furnaces and libraries and pools. In your mind, it continues to exist, even as you lie here. Its walls hold warmth and gradually release it into the empty rooms. Its pools rest, the water scarcely stirred. Its lamps, those that remain lit, burn lower and lower, their flames shrinking until an attendant pinches them out or they consume their last drop of oil. Its furnace, having done its work for the day, will be allowed to soften its roar into a sigh and then into silence. The last faint awareness you have before sleep fully gathers is of being gently cradled by something larger than yourself. Not a person, not a voice, but a place, a set of spaces shaped long ago specifically to offer warmth, cleanliness, and rest to bodies not unlike yours. You feel yourself as one more in a long line of figures who have walked those same corridors, sat on those same benches, immersed themselves in those same waters, then left and gone home, carrying with them the same deep sense of loosened limbs and quiet minds. Slowly, that awareness loosens its grip. The image of the bathhouse recedes like a building seen from farther and farther away, its outlines softening until it becomes simply a gentle, unnameable feeling of safety and warmth. Your breathing continues, steady and soft. The night unfolds, indifferent and kind. And in that shared rhythm of your own breath and the distant, fading memory of stone and water and fire, you drift, without effort, into sleep.